Withology is about collaboration, inspiration, dedication, influence, and positive manifestation. It's about the stories behind success, something everyone needs a little bit of help achieving. Join host Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications, as he interviews the most successful business and industry leaders to hear the fascinating stories about their personal journeys and the people who have helped them get to where they are today. Welcome to Withology.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Withology. I'm Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications and Future Tense Health, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with my guest today. She is one of Time Magazine's most influential people, and her name is Sister Mary Scullion. She serves as the president, executive director, and co-founder of Project H.O.M.E, an organization that's focused on empowering adults, children, and families to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty. Project H.O.M.E provides housing, opportunities for employment, medical care, and education. Sister Mary, I'm so glad you could join me today. Let's start at the beginning of your journey. Sister Mary, I know you're a Philadelphia native, having grown up in the northeast section of town. What was your childhood like? Did you always think you would wind up in nonprofit and advocacy work?
Brian, I think the roots of my early childhood really came from my parents, who both were immigrants to this country from Ireland. So a lot of those early years was welcoming other people from Ireland to the States and helping them get set up. And that's the way when my mother and father came, family members helped them get started. And so my mom and dad often got other people started when they came to this country, finding them work, a place to stay until they could, move out on their own. So from a very young age, I was used to having other people in the house and just, a sense of hospitality and belonging. The Irish culture, the Irish society, all that was very important in my childhood.
So kindness was right there from day one. You mentioned to me one time that in high school, in a program run by St. Vincent de Paul. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I worked each summer at Camp Ozanam, which was a camp for the kids in Philadelphia that didn't have the opportunities to go to the shore, take vacations. And it was run by the Sisters of Mercy, but it was a function of the St. Vincent de Paul Society as well. And I just loved the kids. I loved what the sisters did. And then in the wintertime, I would volunteer at St. Malachy's, where the Sisters of Mercy taught, and where many of the kids had been referred to the camp. So I continued to tutor them in the wintertime and get to know them. And that was those relationships and just the way the sisters worked with the kids, not only in the summer, but then followed them through the school year, just was something that I love to do and love to be a part of.
After high school, you went on and you attended St. Joseph's University, where you got your degree. You didn't go right into the convent. When you were doing that in 1975, there was something called the Eucharistic Congress, and some incredible people attended, particularly three people who are famous Nobel Prize winners, et cetera. People like Mother Teresa, Dorothy Day, and Father Pedro Arrupe. What was it like about these people that they inspired you as a young woman in her 20s?
Dorothy Day was always a hero of mine because of the way she lived her life and put her beliefs and values into action. The Catholic Worker Movement in New York was a place I visited. The Friday night sharings was something that I attended. I loved Dorothy Day, and I loved everything she did and her courage and just the way she lived her life, reflecting the values that she believed in, motivated again by her faith. And the same for Father Arrupe. He was an amazing leader, and his life, he was in Japan when we bombed Pearl Harbor. And that experience profoundly affected his spirituality and his life and leadership till the day he died. So just to be able to be in the same room with both of them was just an incredible inspiration and connection that I just never have forgotten. I had met Dorothy Day, though, at the Catholic Worker. She was so unassuming and so down to earth and hospitality for all. But Father Rupe, it was the first and last time I ever met him. But again, his reflection during the Eucharistic Congress had a profound effect on me. And that was, when anyone is hungry anywhere in the world, the Eucharist is incomplete everywhere in the world. And much later in life, we adopted that similar vision that none of us are home until all of us are home, that we're part of one human family, and what affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. So that just resonated very deeply with me.
The year before you started Project H.O.M.E, I think it was 1988, you were finding that various programs were trying to help various public agencies, private agencies, but there was a lack of coordination. So you put together, I guess it was the first outreach coordination center in America, which was very innovative at the time, about trying to help the chronically unsheltered people without having a program over here. You pulled it all together. Talk a little bit about what that was like, how to integrate those services and support to really change people's lives.
Well, hard to believe, computers were just coming into existence, or the use of computers for the everyday person. So the sense that we could map where people were on the street, men, women, what their needs were, and then get a broad summary of who was out there, where they were, if they were being able to be placed, how many men, how many women, young people, older people, do they have any special needs, any kind of mental health disabilities, or, substance use, physical problems. All that was very, very instrumental because, again, at that time, we were experiencing the bad effects of deinstitutionalization from mental institutions. Everybody on the street, nobody really wanted to go back to those mental health hospitals. The problem was not the release of the people. The problem was there was no place for people to go to. So many of those men and women ended up living on the street. So we thought, Joe McConnell was studying to get her master's in taxes at the time at Drexel University. We met through people on the street who introduced us to one another. They thought that we should know one another and maybe work together a little bit more closely. So we did. So with Joan's experience and knowledge, and kind of the experience and knowledge that I had from just doing street outreach for such a long time, we put together the Outreach Coordination Center, which was the first one in the country. And subsequently, many cities and states, have done the same thing, because it gives you a sense of who is out there. It gives you the ability to plan for what is needed with the appropriate support services, gives you some ability to know how many people are on the street. It's not an exact number by any stretch of the imagination, but you can see trends and you can begin to understand the various phases of homelessness.
What I find fascinating is that it's both of your passion, both Joan, who you give incredible credit to for her role, and she's coming at it from the role of a CPA, a business person. You're coming at it from, obviously, a very accomplished leader. Both of you have this passion, and you're looking at basically data and analytics, and it's really fascinating because it's, like you're saying, it's early on that you're doing this in 1988. I mean, this is not, but that these aren't just numbers of people, and if you could track them, you can really have an impact. 1 year later, you went on to start Project H.O.M.E with Joan Dawson McConnon, who was a CPA. And since then, what you've done is incredible, sister. You have almost 1,000 families that have permanent supportive homes that they are living in, that they own. You provided over 5,000 medical visits just last year alone. And you have a high school program that helps young kids really comprehensively deal with the issues of high school. As a result of it, 100% of the children involved in the program graduated from high school on time. Did you ever think anything like this would be possible?
Brian, we always just try to put one foot in front of the other, but it's really the power of we. More partners like yourself, IBX, the Honickmans, the Middletons, Pew Charitable Trust, the Conley Foundation, who has been with us since the beginning, William Penn Foundation. I mean, there's so many amazing leaders in the Philadelphia area. And if you can articulate the need and how people can be a part of the solution, people just step up and get invested with their time, their talent, and their treasure. And that kind of collaboration produces amazing results. Again, many times in spite of me, not because of me, but it's just the way things work. There's a certain energy that's born through collaboration. There's a certain refinement of ideas and how things can work better. It's just so much fun most of the time to work as a group with different collaborators. And we've just been so fortunate that, again, over the years, none of us are home until all of us are home, that what we believed in the beginning, day one, that you needed housing, opportunities for employment, medical care, and education. Those four issues or needs were the single most important things to both ending and preventing homelessness. It's much better to prevent homelessness than to have to end it. And done in a sense of community where homelessness at its core is just extreme marginalization and isolation. And now I think our country is so much more aware of the devastations of isolation and marginalization through our recent experience with COVID. But for people who are unsheltered, that marginalization and isolation is years and years and years that people may not feel seen or heard or their names even be known. And so for our work, the more people that get involved and the stronger a sense of community that underlies those four issues of housing, education, healthcare, and employment, the better off we will be. It's simply not a delivery of service, but it's the relationships and a sense of community that is built, people knowing one another's names, people being able to rely on one another to get through the day or make a project work. That kind of sense of belonging is very, very important.
How did you build a relationship with Jon Bon Jovi? How did he come to become aware of your work and be such a supporter? I love the part where he was talking about you and he said, you're a nun who swears and spits. And you got up and your thing is you very quietly just said, I do not spit. How did that relationship begin with Jon Bon Jovi? Because he has been such an advocate and supporter of what you're doing.
Brian, the most remarkable part about the relationship that I and we here at Project H.O.M.E with Jon Bon Jovi and other major leaders in our city and really in our country is that foundational to that relationship are the men and women that are unsheltered. In the example of Jon Bon Jovi, he was staying at the Ritz-Carlton. It's a cold winter night. He looked out his window. He saw someone shivering on the street below the hotel. And it just touched him. And he thought, this should not have to be in the United States of America, that I'm in this beautiful place and there's a person outside sleeping on the street on a bitter cold night. So he called the sound engineer at O.B. and he asked him to find a good organization that deals with unsheltered people and their needs. Again, I'm going to make a long story short. O.B. found Project H.O.M.E and he came and he said to us, I work for Jon Bon Jovi. And we joked around with him and I said, well, I work for the Pope. So, you know, when I bring the Pope, you can bring Bon Jovi and the rest will be history. And he said, no, I really do. And so we said, when you bring Jon Bon Jovi here, Obi, we will believe you. But until then, we're assuming this is a joke. So one day he brought Jon to Project H.O.M.E and Jon really loves meeting the people, hearing their stories, and trying to figure out a way that's meaningful to assist people and to give them an opportunity to make their own dreams come true. So Jon, from that day forward, and probably long before I met him, has been doing that in various ways, not only at Project H.O.M.E, but through the Soul Kitchen, through the JBJ Soul Foundation. He's just done so much remarkable work, and he's still a very faithful, generous leader and supporter in this work. One of the other things I'm always grateful for Jon Bon Jovi and Lee Middleton, is long before I did or many other people in this work, they saw the need for supportive housing for kids who were young, kids aging out of foster care, and kids who were LGBTQ, who were living on the streets, more invisible. The youth have a way of blending in, going to the movie theaters, riding on the trains, going to college campus and blending in. So you don't really see homeless youth, but they are there. And Lee and John started our first program to serve young adults that are homeless and young adults between the ages of 17 and 23.
Yeah, it's amazing how you have touched people. And well, you know what it is, sister, too? People care. And sometimes we forget with all the news and things like this, all the division. Most people really do care. They want to help. And you give them a way of feeling that it's trust, it's smart, it's comprehensive. And people of all faiths, I mean, the Middletons, people who are Jewish, people who are Protestant, people who are Catholic, people who have no perhaps any actual religious faith in the way we would normally think of it, but they have compassion and heart. And they look at you and they think, this woman's making it happen. Joan, her entire team of what you've done. So they want to be part of it. It's really remarkable. You find that sometimes it's amazing how people do want to help. They just want to know how to do it.
Brian, I think you're giving me that a little bit too much credit. I think when people come to Project H.O.M.E, much like yourself, and they meet a Helen Brown, or they meet an Alfonso, or they meet Georgiana, or some of the men and women that are trying to make it in life, they see the opportunity and they want to give a hand up for someone else because we were all given a hand up. You think about your story, or I think about my story, being a daughter of Irish immigrants. My mother cleaned houses and my father worked in a bar. I mean, they provided education for us. My aunts and uncles or others provided opportunities for us, schools, education. So people who are unsheltered are the tip of the iceberg. It's a prophetic call for all of us to get involved and to remember that we have a responsibility to make that American dream come true, equal opportunity for all, that we have to continue, not just to enrich ourselves or our communities, but to play it forward, to, reinvest our time, talent, and treasure so others grab onto that and succeed. With meaningful opportunities, most people make good choices.
Yeah. Finally, talk a little bit about the role that for you personally, your faith has placed in your work. I mean, you're a young girl, you're working with kids who are going through challenges. You haven't at that point told your parents that you want to become a Sister of Mercy. And having been educated by the Sisters of Mercy, they're wonderful, wonderful people. I'm here because of that. But talk about that a little bit for you personally, how faith has played a role.
Brian, my faith has developed greatly over the years. It's been transformed by the men and women that I work with here at Project H.O.M.E, both people who are unsheltered, people that are donors, people who are trustees, our staff, everybody. Because here's the bottom line. When I was young, I was attracted to religious life. Honestly, not as much as you would think by my faith, but more by the work the sisters did and how they worked together for common purposes. I just loved what they did. I mean, I'm being honest with you, it wasn't so much a faith thing. But as I got into the community and had various different experiences, I think leaders like Dorothy Day, Father Arupe, and then most recently, Father Greg Boyle, who runs Homeboy Industries, their writings, their reflections, their insights profoundly impacted my experiences. But really the people that brought me closest to God and ignited that faith and grace within me is the men and women that I was privileged to work with that were on the street or have been on the street. They have been my faith, my spiritual mentors. And Father Greg Boyle talks about it as like kinship, that being part of a community where people who have been maybe touched by suffering, and we all have, I guess, to some extent, that through that suffering, it allows us to be touched or changed by God's grace. But it's not me doing something that's changing other people. It's like quite the opposite. It's working together. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. It's the relationships and the bonds that we have with one another. Love changes everything. So if you truly love somebody, we're all going to be changed through that. if it's a one-way street, I'm doing something for you and that's it. Like, that's not love. That might be charity. It might be something, but love is transformational. And that's what I've been privileged to receive. A lot of love from a lot of different people. And I try to play it forward, to the best I can.
It is amazing. And when you go and you see people who perhaps were unsheltered and are now working and having great lives, helping you in what you're doing too, which is like, wow, they're not only in a better spot, but they're passing it on to the next person. Sister Mary, thank you for joining me today for Withology. It's been a remarkable conversation, and it really reflects so completely what Withology is about. None of us are successful alone. It's always with the support and help of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.